I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Novi Board of Education to order. Today is October 28th. I want to welcome everybody here this evening, and if we can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I can get an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support. Recommended by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Murphy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 6-0. Tonight we have reports to the board. We have our Novi Community School District Financial Audit Report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Annually, school districts are required to have a financial audit completed. On October 18th, the Finance Committee of the Board of Education met with the auditing firm of Plant Moran and reviewed the results of the audit for the year ending June 30th, 2021. And tonight, we have Chris Geck here to give us the results of the audit, and so welcome.
Yes, thank you. And I have with me tonight Audit Manager Corey Reinhardt as well, so part of the engagement team this year also.
Nice to meet you, Corey.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
So we'll start off with going over the highlights of the audit results for both the basic financial statements and your federal programs. I'm happy to report tonight that we had an unmodified opinion that we issued on the basic financial statements, which in audit speak is the highest form of assurance, meaning the numbers included in the financial statements are materially stated as presented to you in the packet of information that you received in your board packet, including all the financial statements. We didn't have any material weaknesses or any internal control deficiencies that were identified as part of our audit. We did not notice any instances of noncompliance with laws or regulations when going through audit procedures as well. From the federal audit program perspective, we also did an audit that followed federal requirements for single audits for school districts. And this year we tested the CRF, or Coronavirus Relief Funds. That was a major program that we tested for Novi this year. And frankly, for most school districts, as that was a big part of the funding this year as part of the COVID-19 funding package that was provided to school districts in Michigan. The district was considered a low-risk auditee, which means we've had no issues with the past few audits as well when we've tested your federal programs. We did not identify any instances of compliance findings when we tested your federal programs this year. So, all around a clean bill of health in terms of both the single audit and the financial statement audit. And really, that is a testament to the strength of your business office. And, there was a lot going on this year with all of the new requirements that MDE pushed down to districts in terms of tracking a lot of additional information, a lot of additional reporting due to a lot of these additional pandemic funding programs that happened. And so there was a lot going on. There was a lot to keep up with, a lot of new information. So it really is impressive that everything was still in good order. The books were closed in a timely fashion, and we didn't have any audit findings this year. So congratulations, and appreciate all the assistance of Ms. Wheeler, Mr. McIntyre, and the entire business office.
Thank you very much.
So with that, we'll get into a few slides here that get into some of the results, more specifically for the general fund for the year ended 2021. On the first slide here, you can see the final budget that was adopted in June of 2021. Budgeted final budget revenue was projected at $83.5 million. Total expenditures just over $80.5 million. And the anticipated increase in fund balance for the year was going to be just under $3 million. The actual results for 2021 was total revenue just over $89.7 million, expenditures just over $85.1 million, and an actual increase in fund balance of just over $4.5 million. So the net change, if you look at the difference between the revenue and the expenditures, about 2% off in total when you look at the net change in fund balance over your total revenue. The variance is slightly higher this year compared to past years on the budget to actual for both revenue and expenditures. Really, that's just because of that Walsh building, that purchase that happened near year end. Just an accounting requirement in terms of how that gets reported in the financial statements, where the $4 million purchase shows up as other financing sources in your financial statements. You also record $4 million of capital outlay expenditures. And so really, it's just a gross up in your financial statements to increase revenue, increase expense. That's properly reflected in your actual numbers, but that wasn't included in the final budget amendment. So that's the reason for the slight increase in the variance this year. before we go through the next few slides.
Yep.
All right, this slide here shows the revenue for the general fund for 2021. So as you can see in the blue, the largest source of revenue comes from the state. So that made up about 58% of total revenue of the general fund for 2021. The next largest is the green, which is local revenue, and that's primarily made up of property tax collections. And then the third type is federal, and federal revenue was up a bit this year due to the COVID-19 funding that Chris mentioned. And we do have a slide later on that will get into the detail of what that was comprised of. So this next slide shows the general fund expenditures by function. So this view is really more of a departmental view. So total expenditures amounted to about 85.2 million. And the largest type within those functions would be instruction. So there are two types of instructions within that bar or pie graph. So if we were to look at those two instruction types in total, that made up about 78.6% of total expenditures. And so those expenses really represent amounts spent on the direct instruction of students. So we would expect that to make up a majority of the expenses. This next slide shows how Novi compares to other school districts within Oakland County as it relates to general fund expenditures. So if we look at instructional and instructional support, Novi falls between the high and the average of all of the other districts within Oakland County. And I should mention that these numbers are based on last year's data since the current year information is not yet available. And then when we look at school administration, Novi falls between the low and the average when it comes to other school districts across Oakland County. And then the same goes for operations and maintenance and non-instructional support. Again, they're between the low and the average percentage. And then this slide here shows the expenditures of the general fund by object. So this is a different viewpoint than the slide a couple slides ago. So this really shows how the district spent the money within the different functions. And you can see that salaries and benefits made up about 82% of the total expenditures. And that bucket includes salaries and wages, MIPSers contributions, payroll taxes, benefits. And you might think that that percentage seems high, but it is in line with what we typically see in other school districts. So we would typically see a range between 80 and 90%. And so that Novi's percentage is right within that range. Now I will turn it back over to
question?
Yeah.
Purchase services, does that include food service?
Any purchase service would be outside in the purchase service category there, yeah, outside separately from,
So because we contract for our food service, that would be in that bucket?
it'd be in the purchase service bucket, yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
All right, looking here on this next slide here, we're looking at the change in fund balance from 2013 through the end of the most recently audited fiscal year end, 2021. Again, you can see for this year, increase in fund balance of almost $4.6 million. The projected increase there for 2022, that's based on the original adopted budget that was put in place and adopted by the board in June of 2021. And so that was projecting an increase in fund balance at that time of approximately $60,000. Focusing again on fund balance in the general fund, this is looking at the ratio of your fund balance compared to your expenditures in the general fund for each year, which is really a barometer in which the state and other organizations, would view the health of school districts' fund balance for various reasons. And so 10% has typically been the board goal in terms of maintaining a minimum amount of fund balance, to have adequate fund balance on hand, to manage cash flow and have funds available when districts do not receive state aid payments in the month of September. So having that minimum fund balance on hand helps to still make payroll obligations and pay other obligations that school districts have when state aid payments do not come in during the month of September. So you can see what those ratios were each year, kind of compared to that minimum 10% goal. The total fund balance at June 30 of 2021, as compared to your expenditures for 2021, would put your ratio at 18.42% at the end of last fiscal year. Looking at just the unassigned portion of fund balance, 17.81%. And then if you look at the ending fund balance, add in the anticipated increase based on your original budget of $60,000 increase to fund balance for 2022, that ratio at the end of next year would be projected to be at 19.2%. So this slide here is capturing a lot of the information specific to the pandemic funding that school districts received this past year. Not all of it's been received yet, but this is a snapshot of what has been received to date, but then also additional programs and funding sources that are going to be available starting in 2022, the current fiscal year that you're in now. So kind of starting from the top, Protovirus relief funds, that amount there, the 2.4 million, that's specifically the portion that was passed through from the state. So what that number does not include is the district also received approximately $700,000 from Oakland County as well. So that's in addition to what you see on the graph here. That was received, and that's all reflected as revenue and expenditures in your 2021 financial statements. Same thing with the ESSER 1 dollars, which is tied to the formula for how Title I funding works. That dictated how much districts receive for a lot of the ESSER funding. So the $119,000, that's included in your revenue and expenditures for 2021 as well. It's all been received. The ESSER 2 funding, approximately $340,000 is what the district will receive, and that award will be made available in 2022, so it's not included in your financial statements. And then the ESSER 2 equalization state-funded portion, what that is districts were guaranteed a minimum of $450 per student in ESSER 2 funding. Any district that didn't get that award directly from the federal funding, they received the difference per student to get to the $450 in state-funded dollars. And so that $2.7 million you see there, that came through as supplemental state aid, and that came through in fiscal year 2021, and that was recognized in your 2021 financial statements. Lastly, ESSER 3, there's really two pieces to that. ESSER 3 is $763,000 that's anticipated for Novi that should be received in 2022. And then the ESSER 3 equalization, same kind of concept to ESSER 2, where there's a minimum per student that's expected to be received, but it's increased for ESSER 3 to $1,093 per student. So since Novi's not getting the $1,093 per student directly from that ESSER 3 $763,000 that I mentioned, that difference, the $6.5 million, the last bar there on the graph, that's the difference that will be received to get Novi up to that $1,093 per student. And that'll come through from the state, but it still is federal dollars, so you're still subject to all the federal compliance requirements associated with those dollars as well. So now there's a lot of information on all those funding sources, so there's certainly take any questions if there's any questions on any of those.
Thank you. Does anybody have any
That's
questions?
my question.
You okay?
I do want to say, I always like seeing that slide that shows like where we compare with other people, because I think that is a good gauge for us to look at to see if our spending is consistent with our values.
Yep.
And I look at that and I think, yep, we're doing good. So appreciate that information always every year.
Yeah, and just one last slide for you. So other important item of note, district had about $17.3 million of capital outlay expenditures this year. 13.1 million of that was funded with the funds that were included in your bonded capital projects funds, so all the voter approved millage that was included in those funds, and so 13.1 million was spent both from the sinking funds and the bonded capital projects funds. So really without those voter approved funds, it really would be the general fund that would be bearing the responsibility for all the capital improvements that you see here at Novi.
Mr. Smith?
So I don't want to oversimplify the complex nature of the audit that was done, but I want to make sure I'm reading it correctly, that really the sole recommendation, there were a couple of comments, but Plant Moran's only real recommendation had to do with the segregation of duties as it relates to the super users or the oversight of our financials. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep.
So, and that's like something we're going to do tonight where we approve the bills. And I have asked Mr. McIntyre about that because it's an overwhelming number of either credit card purchases or checks that are written.
Yep.
And when I asked about that, He said, well, with every one of those credit card receipts or checks that are written, there's another piece of paper that explains who it benefited or what it was for. And I said, well, who actually sits and reviews it? I mean, it's a massive amount of stuff. And I looked, and that's why I asked a question of trustee Murphy, you know, who's so-and-so? And they're responsible for example, the track banquet. It's like, wow, that wasn't cheap. So I just, that's what you're referring to is it takes more than just one person.
Right.
Or to have a dedicated team of people that are overseeing kind of each other and that's all tracked on a consistent basis.
Right, exactly.
Well, the thing about that too is there's a lot of money that passes through, like a track banquet thing. A lot of money would come in for parents for that would go out.
To offset,
But we wouldn't
right.
necessarily see the income, we just see what's being spent.
Yep.
This is not a new recommendation.
Yeah, it's been on there every year.
Yeah, and really, you know, the district has the appropriate controls in place, that's why it's not the level of a material weakness or an actual finding. There are checks and balances that are in place, it's just whenever there's that super user ability, even if you have checks and balances, to still see what could happen after the fact,
Okay.
it's just still notifying you that, hey, there's still this access even though you have those checks and balances in place.
Yeah, you're right, Bob, it's like every year or something. Okay. All right, thank you very much,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions, Benedict?
I would like to express my appreciation to Plant Moran for one, and the team that you send is very helpful and very good to work with. And also to Greg McIntyre and Deanna Wheeler and the team in the business office for all their efforts to make sure that you have all the material you need.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank
I
you.
think Mrs. Hood has a,
Well, I wanted to say something too, but I don't know whether I should say it when we talk about committee meetings, or right now. It is about our audit.
please go ahead.
Okay, so, and I'll just wrap it into my committee meeting report, so we don't have to do two things. I don't have to talk twice.
Sounds fantastic.
So the committee met on October 18th, and we reviewed the draft documentation that we went over tonight. And I also wanted to thank Plant Moran for all your work on a thorough audit. But in the bigger picture, Novi's finance team received an unmodified opinion, and that's significant, and we are thankful for that. And just, you know, in this year of really upheaval and unprecedented working conditions and probably a year of more unforeseen financial risks and changes, Mr. McIntyre and Mrs. Wheeler really kept their heads down. All the euphemisms, shoulder the grindstone or whatever they just, oh, nose to the grindstone, there you go, thank you. Mixed metaphors, I'll quit there. And they delivered accurate and correct information to our public auditors, and that's significant, especially when you look at the district's accountability is to the Michigan taxpayers and $85 million in our general fund and a total of $110 million. And we have to show where the money went, where it is, and to have Plant Moran agree that we've done it correctly is significant, and I just wanna recognize that. But I also wanna recognize, I do this every year, I also wanna recognize the Michigan taxpayers. So much of the money that any district, any public school district gets in the state comes from the state, and it comes from sales tax. So anytime somebody buys something and they pay their 6% sales tax, 2 of those percent, so 1/3 of the sales tax, goes into the school aid fund. So when a teenager saves their money and buys a $500 PS5, and maybe it's a 6 now, and they pay their $30 in tax, $10 goes into the school aid fund. If they buy a $1,000 violin, 2 cents on every dollar goes into the school aid fund. So I I will be very gratified when the next time we have a student speaking to us from over there, they preface their comments by saying, as a taxpayer, this is what I would like to happen. And anyway, so I wanted to thank Plant Moran, I wanted to thank our team for really keeping it together and coming out with good results this year. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Hood, for chairing the Finance Committee. I know that there's a lot of due diligence there and working with the team, so we appreciate you and your committee.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I told Plant Moran that they could stay for the meeting if they would like, but I think they politely deferred.
Yeah.
So glad you gave your report then, Mrs. Hood.
Oh, yeah.
Alrighty, so we are gonna move on to our next agenda item. The next agenda item is comments from the audience related to agenda items. There will be another opportunity for comments from the audience at the end of the meeting. Towards the end of the meeting, individuals who wish to address the board, identify themselves, please, as you can put your address on the green card and any organization that you might be representing. There is green card on the back table. Mrs. Holly will collect those, and that is just to ensure that we get the public record correct and that we reach out to you if you have any further questions for us.
This one's related to agenda item, right?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
The board and individual board members will not directly respond to comments or questions that arise during public participation portion of our meeting. Individuals who wish to address the board shall direct their comments to the entire board and not to individual board members, superintendent, or other district employees or members of the audience. Behavior that is intemperate, abusive, defamatory, or discourteous, or otherwise interferes with the ordinary conduct of our board and timely completion of this meeting is strictly prohibited. So if anybody has any specific comments related to agenda items, please go up to the podium. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda items. Tonight on our consent agenda, we have approval of minutes, approval of bills, and approval of field trips. I know there was a POM field trip, but it was for multiple potential overnight field trips. So if I can get a recommendation, please?
I move that the Novice Community School District approve the consent items as presented.
Support.
Recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mrs. Roney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 6-0. We have two action items tonight, the first one being the personnel report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. I will turn to Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. This evening, we have 3 new hires. Chelsea Dixon, a special education teacher at Village Oaks. Erica Holman, second grade teacher at Parkview. And Rodney Youssef, bus driver in transportation. We have 3 resignations. Kristen Baker, psychologist. Beth Canales Herbert, an English language arts and food science teacher at the high school. Danielle Koenig, a social worker at Orchard Hills. Also, 1 retirement, Kristen Gravinsky, choir teacher at Novi Middle School.
Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. If I can get a motion, please? Mrs. Murphy,
I'll move to approve the personnel report as presented.
Support.
recommended by Mrs. Murphy and supported by Mr. Mena. Any comments or questions for Dr. Kinzer?
I'm just gonna say your job is never done.
Nope.
So obviously we'll be hiring new people and a high school teacher that's leaving on the 22nd. Is it safe to assume that's already been posted?
Yes,
Because the 22nd was last week?
correct. It's posted.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to see her go.
Definitely. Do they have a substitute in that class
Yes.
currently? Okay. And then Mrs. Gravinsky, she's been here for many, many years. She's done a fantastic job at the music department over there at the middle
And
school.
she's enjoying that beautiful room for at least a little while.
Good. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We have a second action item, which is resolution for National Principals Month. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Whereas the National Association of Secondary School Principals, the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and the American Federation of School Administrators have declared the month of October 2021 as National Principals Month. And whereas principals and assistant principals are expected to be educational visionaries, instructional leaders, assessment experts, disciplinarians, community builders, public relations experts, budget analysts, facility managers, special program administrators, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives, as well as being entrusted with young people, the most valuable resources. Whereas principals set the academic tone for their schools and work collaboratively with teachers and teacher leaders to develop and maintain high curriculum standards, develop mission statements, and set performance goals and objectives. Whereas the vision, dedication, and determination of a principal provides the mobilizing force behind any school reform effort. Whereas leadership is second only to classroom instruction among all school-related factors that contribute to what students learn at school, according to research conducted by the Wallace Foundation. And whereas the NAESP, National Distinguished Principals Program, honors exemplary elementary and middle level public, private, and independent school leaders, as well as leaders from the United States Department of Defense Schools, the United States Department of Schools overseas, for outstanding leadership and student learning professions. And whereas the NASSP National Principal of the Year program began in 1993 as a means to recognize outstanding middle level and high school principals who have succeeded in providing high-quality learning opportunities for students as well as their exemplary contributions to the profession. And whereas the American Federation of School Administrators promotes the professional and occupational interests of public school principals, administrators, and supervisors across the nation. And whereas the celebration of the National Principals Month would honor elementary, middle level, and high school principals and recognize the importance of school leadership and ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. And whereas the month of October 2021 would be an appropriate month to designate as National Principals Month, now therefore be it resolved that the House of Representatives honors and recognizes the contribution of school principals and assistant principals to success of students in the nation's elementary, middle, and high schools, and encourages the people of the United States to observe National Principals Month with appropriate ceremonies and activities that promote awareness of school leadership and ensuring that every child has access to a high-quality education. Now therefore be it resolved that the Novi Community School District Board of Education, one, recognizes the month of October 2021 as National Principals Month and honors the contributions of Novi Community School District principals and assistant principals. David Asher at Novi Woods, Julie Bedford, who just retired from Deerfield, Laura Carino at Parkview, Audra Ringel at Orchard Hills, Alex O'Feely at Village Oaks, Lisa Fenchel at Novi Meadows, John Brickey at Novi Meadows, Robert Baker at Novi Middle School, Katie Dinkelman at Novi Middle School, Nicole Carter at Novi High School, Melissa Jordan at Novi High School, Ronald Kane at Novi High School, and Andrew Cohn at Novi High School. We would ask the board to adopt this resolution and recognize the contributions of these principals to our success here in Novi.
Thank you. If I can get a recommendation? No, there isn't one written, so go ahead there,
I'll
Mr. Smith.
recommend that the Novi Community School District Board of Education adopts this resolution and recognizes the month of October as National Principals Month.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Recommended by Mr. Smith and supported by Mrs. Hood. Any comments or questions? Mrs. Murphy?
Well, I think maybe we
We
need
need
to
to include
add Dr.
somebody.
Kinzer to the list.
As interim principal.
Interim principal at Deerfield, and then didn't we have a teacher that stepped into the role for a while last year when Andrew Cohn was doing other
We
work?
have a dean of students now at the high school, Angie Southworth.
So, but she was acting principal for a while.
She was actually dean of students at the middle school.
Oh, is that what they,
Yep.
how they give her? Okay, then ignore that. Just add Dr. Kinzer.
Oh, and yes, Mrs. Hood rightly points out, we should honor Emily Polanski as well as our new virtual school principal.
Oh,
So there was one that we missed, Mr. Murphy.
I knew that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Would you add the principal for the summer school program?
We could, but,
Do you know who it is?
Linda Champera.
Oh,
Just
Of
ask.
course.
she is technically a director in the district, so.
That's fine. Rather seek to understand than exclude by default.
We appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you to our principals and all the hard work that they do, especially in this past year or 18 months of managing many different things and wearing different hats. Thank you to Dr. Kinzer for stepping in. I hope you're having a grand old time there with the students. I can see that smile on your face.
He especially enjoys drop off and pick up.
I know. I told him, you gotta be out there with that coat on, right?
It's a well-oiled machine.
Alrighty. Hearing no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 6-0. Thank you. We will move on to committee reports. Mrs. Hood already gave her committee report for the Finance Committee.
I would like to add.
Oh, no.
I had extended comments this evening because we had no audience and no audience questions. So
Okay,
the committee meeting itself was pretty boring.
okay,
Thank you.
maybe someone
You
will
must be
listen
doing a
next
great
time.
job.
Our next committee report is Governance and Policy Committee. Our chair, Mr. Cook, is excused absent tonight, so I think we can just move this to the next meeting. I was in attendance at the Governance and Policy Committee meeting. I can tell you we reviewed 4 policies. No action has been taken to move anything forward to the full board. We've requested some further information, and we'll be conducting, Mr. Cook will be conducting a further meeting to continue our conversation, so.
That's
where
my
I stand
understanding.
on
We're
that.
just waiting on a new date, another date.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have our second opportunity for comments from the audience. Again, if you come up to the podium, state your name, and please make sure you fill out a green card. That would be very helpful. We have a 5-minute time limit. Mr. Mena, as our secretary, will be keeping track of time and give you a 30-second warning. Not to cut you off, but just to kind of keep you in track so that you don't lose your last thoughts up there.
DeLon Woods, 9589 Berkshire Point. I actually have coming with just good news. I had the pleasure of attending the trunk or treat event with my son and wife, and it was a fabulous event at Deerfield Elementary. And I must say, Acting Principal Kinsler, we couldn't be in better hands. He attended one of our PTO meetings and offered the community the opportunity to help out in the hiring process with the next principal for Deerfield. So I actually am up here to give sort of, as a parent, I couldn't be more proud to be a resident of Novi and the work that you all are doing. I know you hear a lot of acrimony and what you would say consternation, but what I call it is caring parents who want the best for their kids and what they believe is the best for their kids. So I think that that's the strength of this community. I also think that we as parents have an opportunity to give these folks help as well. I think it's incumbent upon us all to look at this as us versus them, or either. It is all. And I want to leave with this. I think over the next year, we have an opportunity to heal. We have vaccines that are coming out. However your position on vaccines, by the way, I'm not advocating one way or another, but there's vaccines that come out that can end this thing once and for all, that are going to be available for 5 through 12-year-olds. And so if we have the ability to vaccinate, we have the ability to get to a point where we can go into 2022 without the mask, going in one direction, then I think this could be one of the best rebounds ever in a community that can show others how to do it right. And so we have the talent, we have the parents, we have the leaders, and I think we're in a position to really be an exemplary district for not just the United States, but the world. And so that's all I have to say, but thank you, Dr. Kinsler, and looking forward to working with you on the principal search. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chris Holman, my address is on file. I guess first I'd like to thank Mr. Woods for bringing some positivity. I think we don't do enough of that. I think I don't do enough of that. So I'd like to thank whoever does the video that goes up on YouTube. I don't know who handles all the transitions, but I think they do a great job. So whoever that is, kudos to you. So unfortunately, here talking about masks again, got Dr. Matthews' email. He was probably expecting me to come in here after we got our opinion from our lawyer. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I deal with a lot of contracts at work, so I'm not unfamiliar with legalese and how laws are interpreted. I guess I would disagree a little bit with our lawyer's opinion. Oakland County, there's not really two conflicting laws in place, so Oakland County's definitely has the authority to issue health orders from MCL 333.2433. It's a pretty generalized law about their authority to control pandemics, etc. The recent law that was just passed that many people thought would actually rescind that doesn't actually rescind the law, but it does kind of offer some restrictions about what counties can do in their orders. Specifically, it says that you can't mandate masks on children. It doesn't rescind their ability to issue orders, it just says that you can't put masks on children. If they wanted to say all teachers had to wear masks, they could certainly do that, but it's really specific to children, so there's really not conflict between these two laws. The most recent thing that was passed is really more of a clarification. So whether it's unconstitutional or not, who knows, it hasn't been litigated. Oakland County even states on their website the ability of health officers to issue orders has not been challenged in court, yet the local health officer's power is not limitless. You know, personally, I feel if we're not going to challenge Oakland County in court, then I'm really asking the board and Dr. Matthews to be direct with parents of this district. Like, don't put out a legal opinion and say, you know, maybe we really wanted to do this back in August, but we can't do it. Just be direct. Say, we're not going to allow kids to come to school without wearing a mask until Oakland County changes things. There's 83 counties in Michigan. I think there's only 6 or 7 of them that still have mask mandates. As you probably read in the Detroit News this week, the county with the most COVID outbreaks in schools is Oakland County. So what does that mean? Some would say, oh, things are bad, we need to mask up even more. Really what it says is that masks aren't working. I think that anybody that looks at things objectively knows that masks aren't working. Our kids don't have to wear masks anywhere else but inside the doors of our schools. Yet somehow there's enough people thinking that we're really protecting our kids by only making them wear masks 6 or 7 hours a week. So the other 75 counties in Michigan that don't have mask mandates, they seem to be doing fine, certainly no worse than us. If we're gonna bow to the authorities in Oakland County, the county, again, doing the absolute worst in the state by counting school outbreaks, I think we're essentially being negligent. I mean, it's certainly not a money issue. We have a lot of money in this district to fund a legal challenge, and I think that's what we should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Anybody else have any comments for the audience tonight?
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Jeremy Rogers, first time here and live in Meadowbrook Lake subdivision.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I have your name again?
Jeremy Rogers. Yep. I just want to introduce myself. Not really going to comment on anything else other than just say hello, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future. So,
Thank you for being here.
thanks.
Awesome. Any other comments from the audience? Everyone's so shy to come up to the podium tonight.
Well, I'm not too shy. Good evening, everybody. So Betsy Bodwine, most of you know me now, 3 kids in the district, and I just wanted to say I continue to support masks until the vaccines are available. It's not going to be a whole lot longer. And I also saw that article that Mr. Holman referenced about Oakland County having the most outbreaks. And I had kind of a different understanding of it. It sounded to me like, while we have the most incidences of outbreaks, we have smaller outbreaks here than what they have in other counties without mask mandates, which to me actually kind of told me that I thought the masks were helping. So if in other schools they're ending up with 40 cases and we have 6, that to me is a good improvement. I also, and I understand everyone's kids are different, but I had a thing happen this morning that kind of made me laugh, since I know there are so many people that are saying that the masks are really a problem for their kids. I just wanted to share this little story. This morning, I handed my 6-year-old her mask and said, here's your mask you want for school. It's her favorite one. It has a little animal face on it. And it was like an hour and a half before she was supposed to go to school, but I had given it to her. I walked back out in the living room a couple minutes later, and she was just sitting on the couch wearing it, watching TV. So it clearly does not bother her. She, I mean, honestly kind of likes it half the time. She thinks it's cute. So I know there are some people who are having like struggles with it at home, but I just wanted to say from my family, it hasn't really been a big issue, and we did virtual last year, so I really expected it to be a problem for the kids this year to adjust to that. And while I respect everybody, you know, should be able to have their opinions heard, and I'm certainly happy to hear and see people show up to these meetings. I think it's wonderful. I just think at this point we are so close to the finish line, and if I may offer a somewhat crude example, it feels to me like giving up at this point would be getting an MIP a week before you turn 21. I think we are so close, and we just need to stay the course, and we will all get through it together. And I want to thank you all for entertaining the questions on the legality of it, and for your continued efforts to do the best to unite a very divided community on so many different issues. So thank you all. I appreciate you, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments for the board? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you for everyone being here tonight and sharing your feedback. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. Our Novi High School tennis team placed 4th in the state. Congratulations to them. The Novi High School volleyball team won the KLAA tournament, defeating Northville along the way, so that is well done. And our Novi High School football team plays West Bloomfield tomorrow night in the first round of the MHSAA playoffs, so we wish them good luck as well. Next week, I will not be present at the board meeting, nor will Miss Murphy. We are headed to Washington, D.C. with over 300 of our 8th grade students and many other staff members. And I am deeply appreciative of our staff, especially Kenny Fenchel, who organizes the trip every year. And these staff members have committed time and energy to give our students this opportunity, and I'm very appreciative of that. And that's my report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. And we are delighted to hear that the students will be able to get to go to Washington, D.C. this year. That's really fantastic. So, great. Next, we'll move on to our administrative reports. We'll start with Dr. Kinzer.
Thank you, Dr. Ruskin. First, I just wanted to offer some additional congratulations for Mr. McIntyre and Mrs. Wheeler, working closely with the business office and watching them do their work. The level of scrutiny over all purchases in the district is astounding to me. And they do an absolutely fantastic job, so I was in no way surprised at the outcome of our audit. So I just wanted to offer those comments. I do want to share that I have found this week a wonderful reminder of why I served as a building administrator for 18 years in my career. Being close to our students and staff has been just a joy for me. I love the job I do in central office, and I'll be happy to come back to it full time, but I am loving my time at Deerfield as well. So it's a great school with fantastic teachers and students. A quick update on our Deerfield principal hiring process. So that posting closed last week. We had approximately 80 applicants. We screened. We use an online screener as our first step in our process, about 25 of them. I will be settling in to do phone interviews with a dozen of those candidates in the next couple weeks. From there, we'll recommend about 4 or 5 to move forward to a panel interview, which will happen later in November. Dr. Matthews will meet with candidates that remain at the end of that process. We'll do our reference checking and make an offer. and we will be prepared to bring a recommendation to you on December 16th.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kinzer. Thank you for sharing that process and for wearing two hats. I know the joy that you get being with the students, and a pleasant reminder of how fun it is and how challenging, and
Absolutely.
yes, definitely. So, Dr. Weber.
Right on. We all can just listen really carefully. You might be able to hear the first choir concert in 2 years happening at Novi Middle School. That's occurring right now. Seeing, driving from my home to here and seeing the youngsters get out with their tuxedos on and all those things is really fantastic. So it's one of the beautiful things about our community public schools that we lift up the arts. Principal Appreciation Month, I can say that I've never served in a really great building as a teacher, unless there was a truly great leader in that space. And the difference that a high-quality principal makes in the entire environment is extraordinary, and we are very fortunate to have so many serve here beside us, and so many choose to serve throughout the country. And finally, Brene Brown has a quote that kind of rang out to me. We had a meeting today with folks from IRA, and we got to look at our data from fall of 1920, so pre-pandemic, to fall of 21-22, so some sixth grade data. And the quote that she had is, "What separates privilege from entitlement is gratitude." And I am here to express my sincere gratitude to our students, our teachers, our administrators, our parents, because what I saw today absolutely melted my mind. And that's the fact that, and Dr. Kinzer was there, so feel free to pop in. So as we looked at our reading data from fall 1920 to our reading data this fall coming out of the pandemic of a year and a half, our students improved by 3 points. Improved. Stunning. A year and a half, hybrid, trauma, every single piece is there. And I will say, when I saw that graphic and when I saw that sitting there, what struck me the most is that graphic was simply an affirmation, and data being an affirmation of everything that this community put into taking care of our children over what has been an exceptionally difficult year and a half. And I know myself as a dad here and as an employee here and a person who served this community for 12 years, I am exceptionally grateful and will never take for granted numbers like that, because as the folks that I already said who give this assessment to 11 million kids around the country, they don't see this. They haven't seen this. So, big ups out there for everyone who got after it. Thank you. And again, what do you hear it? Another song. All right. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Dr. Weber, and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that data with us. We look forward to seeing more details of that in the future. Next, we'll move on to board communication. If anyone has anything that they would like to share with the rest of the board.
I'll give a quick shout out.
Sure.
I'm excited to report a follow-up to something I shared with all of you and with our community, that on election Tuesday, not because it has anything to do with the election, because our kids are off, the Friends of Novi Schools, which is a new organization supporting our kids and our teachers, will be hosting a private screening for the film Dear Evan Hansen at Imagine. And this was an idea that I ran past Principal Carter and her team at the high school. And I'm thrilled to report that as of yesterday, there are 166 students signed up to watch a movie that I stumbled into because I was looking for a musical to see with my daughter, who was a senior at the time, and spent the next couple hours laughing, crying, singing, reminiscing about a wonderful film that touches on many aspects of mental health, the LGBTQ plus community, anxiety, depression, medication, suicide, a lot of the things that our young kids are dealing with on a regular basis. I think it's important that they have an opportunity to be able to see that with others that they can relate to in a safe environment. So that'll happen, 11 a.m. is the arrival time, I'd imagine. 11:30 will be the screening. And if there's other kids out there in the community that aren't able to attend or want to attend with a group that they can relate to in a safe place, that would be the place to do it. I also want to report to my fellows at the board and the community that on Friday, November 5th, the Novi Youth Association will be hosting its annual breakfast from 7:30 to 8:30 a.m. at the Civic Center. It's an opportunity for us to recognize those in the community that support that organization and the wonderful work that we do for all kids in our community. I will follow that up by letting you guys all know that seems like a week ago, last night, Wednesday night, at the Novi Civic Center, the Novi Youth Association hosted Judy Lipton, who's a social worker and caseworker. She gave a talk for 2 hours on ADHD and anxiety and methods to work with those students as parents and for the students. We had 36 people attend, which if you try to host an event on a Wednesday night in Novi and you get 36 people there, that's actually a great turnout. So that's the type of work that NYA is doing for our community. I want to thank Andrea Smith, my co-chair of that organization, Lisa Shields, our caseworker, and Maria, our coordinator for all those programs. So we're trying to make a difference one day at a time. So thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Smith. And I have a quick question in regards to the NYA. I know that some sports athletic teams are adopting families. Do you have the right ratio of families that need to be adopted for the holidays and adopters, if you will?
The honest answer is there's more families that we can adopt. We will end up letting people know that we're full. But again, we're blessed to be in a community where, as Marianne knows, because we worship at St. James, you know, there's no shortage of families that are looking for things to do and gifts. We will be hosting our annual Adopt a Family in early December. I'm thrilled to announce that we just partnered with the Novi Chamber of Commerce, who have their annual holiday luncheon on Tuesday, December 14th. And that will be open to all the members of the Novi Chamber of Commerce. And in addition to showing up at the door with your ticket, you're encouraged to show up with a wrapped, unused gift that will be all donated to NYA and be distributed to other families. So if there's other organizations looking for families, we've got more.
Great.
So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Any other board members have any reports? Okay. Okay. I was gonna say we're all set, and Mrs. Murphy, we won't cut you off. Do you have anything you want to share?
Obviously, Dr. Mathers said I will not be at the next board meeting.
Correct.
I'll be gone.
Thank you for chaperoning our
I
students.
am excited about it. I'm excited every year. It's gonna be different this year. Obviously, we can't go to the Capitol, and
Right.
there's a few things that they've had to cut out, but they've added some additional things, so that will be interesting, because I haven't been to some of them. I kind of have a question, but maybe I can wait and talk to Mr. McIntyre about it, because we had some fraudulent charges on one of our things.
Yeah,
That doesn't happen very often.
it does not. And we have processes that obviously catch that.
Yeah, I was glad to see that, especially given the audit was here, but I have not really ever seen those on there. So,
Yeah,
at least
just
not that many.
Reach out to Mr. McIntyre.
So I will reach out to him, because it'd be kind of nice I mean, I know sometimes we as individuals occasionally have fraudulent charges on our credit card, so it does make sense. You know, I just didn't know if there was a particular incident, but
You can just reach out to them.
I will do that.
Thank you. Any other communication from the board? Okay. Hearing none, I want to wish the football team good luck tomorrow. I know that they pulled a tough 8th in the state
We've
football.
beaten them before.
And we have beaten them before when we were in this exact situation previously in 2015. Is that correct, Mr. Mena?
This time they're reigning state champs, too, so.
Yes. So it will be a challenging game, but I know that our boys have been working their tails off and are up for it. And I think that in my positive headspace, I think they can do it. So I think that we're just gonna go with that for this evening and see how it all turns out. So good luck to them tomorrow. So that being said, if I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting,
So moved.
Support.
recommended by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Roney. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.